Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about the ASUS ROG Ally. A lot of you have been asking for my thoughts on this one. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who watch Retro Rebound, you know that my heart and soul belongs to handheld gaming. I would not be the gamer I am today without the handheld experience because I traveled a lot, I was on the road a lot because my brother was really into sports, so he was on all these travel teams. And so without handheld gaming, I just could not have fallen in love with video games as I have today. And it's funny because in the 2020s, my expectation was not that we'd be in a handheld gaming renaissance, but here we are. Now, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by AMD. You're gonna find the AMD Z1 chipset within your ASUS ROG Ally. It's powering this whole thing here. And I gotta just say that while I had a pre-order locked in, I've been playing around with this thing for a month now to really solidify my opinion. You know, this is my approach to hardware-based sponsorships. I don't want to blah out a video, even if it's going to hurt the viewership. I want to honestly put time into the device, test it rigorously, and come in and just be able to talk about my thoughts on the device itself. There's no real rules or talking points to this, which for those who aren't in the sponsorship department, which many of you aren't, is incredibly rare. It's just play the device, talk about your impressions with the games, and that's it. So that's what I was gonna do anyway. Here we are, but shout out to AMD for sponsoring today's video. And with that, let's get started with the experience right out the box. Pretty simple unboxing experience, which I gotta say, I appreciate, lets you get right into the action. This does have Windows built into it, so booting it up, there's a bit of a process in getting everything set up. But the beauty of that is that you can go right into Steam, Epic Game Store, Xbox Game Pass. And Xbox, we're gonna hone some of our focus in on here because the question really is this handheld that I have right here in front of you, the Xbox handheld of our dreams? We've asked Xbox for so long, hey guys, gals, can you make us a handheld? And they seem to be really gung-ho on supporting this ROG Ally. In fact, months ago, before the release of the ASUS ROG Ally, I was invited to a preview event for it. Now, I was sick, so I couldn't make it, but it was interesting because the invite didn't come from AMD or ASUS, it came from Xbox. And my boy, Lord Cognito, who runs Defining Duke alongside me, has been one of the biggest advocates for the ASUS ROG Ally since he got his hands on it. And that's what made me want to pre-order it and get involved with it because, again, I love handheld gaming. So booting it up, I downloaded a ton of games to test it out, right? With the AMD Z1 chips in here, I was thinking, all right, you're boasting this really strong chipset. You got a beautiful screen here. Frame rate can go high and you can tweak all of that through like the FPS limiter and the little control panel to the side. You can change the operating mode how you desire, which again lets you customize your experience a bit on the fly. Very useful for modern games, may I add. What game can I put to the test? So I went for something a little more modern off the rip in a recently released title, Exoprimal. I've been enjoying it as I mentioned in my review, so I thought, okay, let's fire something brand spanking new up and see how this runs, especially multiplayer, handheld. I've never had the best experiences with that, and I enjoyed it. I mean, the image quality really does speak for itself, and the fact that this thing isn't roaring like a jet engine is very impressive. And speaking of which, now's a good time to mention some of the overheating problems I've seen online that people are having. This is something I have yet to experience. I talk a lot with Jimmy Champagne, who runs Deck Ready, which is a more handheld focused channel, and he personally hasn't had really any of these issues. And then Lord Cognito, who runs Defining Duke with me, hasn't had many issues either. So it seems to be hit or miss, and it does seem to be more avoidable, and there are BIOS updates coming in to hopefully help tweak and adjust to those things. But fortunately, as someone who's been playing not only Exoprimal, but all these other games I'm going to tell you about, no overheating problems whatsoever. So after Exoprimal, I was like, okay, modern game, runs, feels, looks great. All right, let's do what I love to do with every handheld that I get, which is download everything under the sun. So of course I gotta get my Bethesda Game Studios fix. While this isn't gonna be the biggest test of AMD's Z1 chips, I had to go ahead and try out Fallout 3. To me, this is the dream experience, being able to play Fallout 3 on the go. I've been saying it for a while how bad I want it, but this device is making that possible. That said though, y'all, I gotta throw out there that the speakers here really did impress me. Like when I was listening to some of the dialogue,
your mother would have been so proud.
I don't know, to me it was just weirdly good. I usually don't catch these types of things. I analyze audio to a degree in my reviews, but it's definitely not my specialty. So when it stands out to me, I always think, wow, they did a really good job there. The surround sound is beautiful. Now I will warn you, if you do buy this device, there's a bit of a laser light show that goes on around these thumbsticks, as you'll see in some of the gameplay. When you even put the device in hibernation mode, just know you might have a moment where you're in the club all of a sudden and you're gonna be laying there 3 a.m. What's going on? You might wanna get into the control panel and adjust some of the RGB settings. You can do that, shut them off. You can set profiles for specific games. All that stuff is there. So just keep that in mind. I wanna warn you all because we did a podcast for Defining Duke Ultimate with myself, Jimmy, and Cog, and we talked about that, and all of us had the same experience. It was like 3 a.m. We're like, man, what's going on? Why is there strobe light showing here? You gotta augment the RGB settings because they will go off if this is in a room where you are sleeping, and it may be a little distracting, but it is adjustable. Let's talk form factor here because that is something that is so important to get right over lengthy game sessions in a handheld device. How comfortable is it? For me as a gentleman with, I'd say, decent size hands, this fits just right, especially these two back paddles here. They serve as almost a finger rest for me, which eases some of the pressure off the lower parts of my fingers here, like my pinky and my ring finger. So I gotta say that overall, when it came to longer game sessions, especially with the offset analog sticks, much more akin to like an Xbox controller for me, I didn't get that fatigue on the inside of my hands, which I typically get with every brand new handheld that I use. So this was the first time that I never did get that. So a shout out to the form factor. It worked really well for me, although given like the edgy nature of it, I'm like terrified of dropping this thing. So I'm gonna try to not manhandle it right now. Next game I fired up was Mass Effect Legendary Edition. This thing ran like a beauty. Out of everything I played, I was not disappointed by anything, but I was most impressed by Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I mean, this thing runs like an absolute dream on the ROG Ally. And when it comes to battery life, I found this to be the most generous one. I played about an hour of Mass Effect 2, and when I bumped out, I was thinking, all right, like what's the battery looking like here? And it was at 85% after 1 hour. I was thinking, whoa, that's a lot better than I was expecting. And that was with firing it up as its default settings and whatnot. It wasn't sitting in the charge or anything. So I was pretty impressed with that battery life after that much playtime, given how much power is behind this device. That's gonna differ from game to game. Something like Exoprimal did stress the battery life a lot more because it's a much more current game. I could hear the fans going a little bit harder. So there are little things you gotta keep in mind with that. Now, the ROG Ally does come with 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate for free. So I went in there and tried a number of things. I already have a Game Pass subscription, so I didn't have to use it, but I did go in there and try a couple of things out. Something like Chained Echoes. This was a JRPG that I missed at the end of last year. And yeah, this can be your indie machine. This is where, again, the battery life is a little bit more generous to games like this that I would say, and I don't mean this as an insult, aren't as technically demanding. There's so many games I want to try, and this was the first year in probably half a decade where I fell victim to the Steam sale. I bought Detroit Become Human, I bought MK11 Aftermath. MK11 Aftermath was one I did fire up because I never played any of the DLC for MK11, and especially I want to get caught up on the story before MK1. This was another game that ran really well, and with MK11 constantly going on sale, this would definitely be a recommendation of mine for the ROG Ally. It ran extremely well, looked beautiful. I think that kind of speaks for itself in the image quality that you're seeing on screen. But also getting caught up on the MK1 story. To me, NetherRealm just knocks it out of the park every time. So I just want to make sure I'm all caught up on something I completely missed, especially because now you can do fatalities with the Joker. Something I feel like with Mortal Kombat Cross DC Universe back in the early 2000s, we didn't really get that opportunity to see the brutality there. So now we can do that on the go. And I think with fighting games, they feel really good here on the ROG Ally. You know, the D-pad felt good, which is something I also wanted to highlight is we'll call the pressiness of it. You know, you hear that? That stuff was great. It's a little bit more clicky is how I define it. I will say over time, because it's a new kind of D-pad here, as you run your thumb along it, you're gonna feel it after about an hour or so of gameplay. Not like you're gonna be super sore, but it's definitely gonna be something you break in a little bit, but there is enough give where it does feel okay during fighting games. And then I like to do a pressiness test. I apologize if that sounds really weird, but you know, like that kind of responsiveness from the buttons. And yeah, it's got solid feedback here. Some people like the silence of their button presses, but this you can hear like gives off a little something. So just keep that in mind if you don't like clicky little buttons, but to me, not a problem at all. It also comes with a little bit of a dock here, so you can set it up within this little slot here, and that's an easy way to charge it and keep it upright. I also tried via Game Pass xCloud streaming because I've become more and more of a supporter of Xbox's cloud gaming vision. So I tried Persona 3 Portable on there. Not the biggest, strongest test, but enough to get a feel for running around Tartarus, you know, what's the responsiveness like here. And overall, I was very pleased with that. You know, I've had poor experiences on other devices out there. So I do have to say that when you have the local downloadable games, I don't need to be connected to the cloud. And then also when I want to use the cloud, maybe fire something up, test it out quickly, see how it runs. Obviously helps conserve battery life if that's a big issue for you. You can really reap the benefits of cloud gaming and downloadable gaming here with the ROG Ally. Again, because it functions more and more like a PC than just this handheld console. So you can do a lot with it. And also just a little shout out to the virtual keyboard. I never really had a problem with it. Normally I take like Bluetooth mini keyboard and mouse and hook that all up, but the navigating of the desktop here on the ROG Ally was never a problem with me. So overall, I'm really impressed with it. Yeah, it's definitely your premium gaming handheld device, no doubt about it, but it's definitely, from my experience, is backing up what they've put into it with the AMD Z1 chips and the amount of performance I'm getting out of modern games nonetheless. I mean, to me, battery life be damned. I don't care. I want to see these games running 1080, 60 in handheld and enjoy something I've never had in handheld gaming before. So to me, it gets a big thumbs up. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that's enough for me. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, your experiences, because the device has been out in the wild for a while. Have you enjoyed your time with the ROG Ally? Please do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.